Good morning, everyone. Welcome back from the break. It feels like ages since I've seen you guys. Hopefully, everyone had a productive week off lectures and managed to have some group meetings, and you guys are well on your way. Hands up who's had more than 3 group meetings so far for Project 2. Okay, this project, I guarantee, will sneak up on you. This is not an easy project and not something you can pull out in the last 2 weeks. If you have not had more than 3 group meetings, you guys are behind. Okay? You guys need to meet, you need to be working on this project. I need 10 hours a week out of you for this subject. That includes last week. All right, if you do not spend 10 hours a week or 10 hours last week on this subject, you need to find 20 hours this week. And if you don't spend 10 hours this week and you didn't spend 10 hours last week, you need to find 30 hours next week. Simple as that. All right? So if you guys, fair enough if you're devoting to MA 1000 or PH 1005 or something like that, I'd much rather you get a decent mark in that or at least pass that and get a low mark in my subject. But if you're not doing anything, you really, really, really need to pay attention to your time management for university, because first semester, the last couple of weeks, you'll have quizzes, you'll have assignments due, you'll have things happening so fast, it'll make your head spin. All right? If you do not get on top of it right now, which is what lecture recess last week was technically for you guys to get on top of your studies. If it was a big holiday, hopefully you're nice and refreshed and you've got 80 hours this week to spend on it to get on top of your studies. But either way, you guys need to get up to speed with stuff, because otherwise you won't pass. That's university, okay? So this project is much, much larger than the first project, which is why you have a longer time frame. You have the lecture recess break to work on it. You have a number of other opportunities. If you're getting behind with it, you need to get on top of it immediately, okay? Because otherwise, you won't get a good mark or you won't pass the subject. Because fundamentally, this subject's 2 quizzes and a couple of big assignments, and that's it. That's your marks. You don't have an opportunity to gain back marks by studying in lecture in the exam period or whatever. All right, so, the last thing, workshops. So everyone hopefully got my email about, obviously, lecture recess. There's never any classes in lecture recess, never classes scheduled. So if you're going every second week, then you just act like that didn't exist, and then this is the second week. So group 3 for the workshops, your class was yesterday. Group 4, your class was yesterday. Group 3, who would have been on Monday with a public holiday, you guys are on this Friday. All right, so all group 3 workshops, if you haven't submitted it yet, your class is on this Friday in the normal rooms, normal times. Next week, what we're going to do is I'm going to have some screencasts for you, and you guys are going to learn how to use PebblePad, and you're going to create your own ePortfolio in that workshop time. I'm going to talk about why today. So this is kind of the primer for that workshop. Next week, once again, we have a Monday public holiday. So next week is Group 1 and 2. Group 2 will be on the Tuesday. Group 1 bounces to the Friday. Okay, is everyone okay with that schedule? It's gigantically painful that we have all of these Monday public holidays, and it makes it difficult for you guys to keep track of where you are and when. But next week, Group 1 and 2, 2 on the Tuesday, 1 on the Friday, and then the following week we're back to normal. So it'll be 3 on Monday, 4 on Friday, 4 on Tuesday. I'm confusing myself. Hopefully you got my email with the calendar schedule and everything like that. If you have any issues about when your class is, please come and see me. All right, so today and portfolios and doing this kind of stuff that we'll be talking about falls squarely in implement various practical skills for university life, and technically with portfolios and CVs, which I'll talk about, you're talking about practical skills for university life and after. All right, so how do I get a job? Who wants a job? Why are you here? To get a job. Yeah. So, I mean, there might be a very small proportion of you that are here for shits and giggles and because you thought it was interesting, but fundamentally almost everyone will be here because they want a job. You want to be an engineer, and you want a job that is fulfilling, that maybe you can make a difference in the world. So refer back to the grand challenges that I was talking about in the first lecture. Engineers have as good a chance as anyone to make a big difference in the world. You want to make some decent money because unqualified you can make a lot less money than you can with a decent degree. You want a rewarding job in so much as you do different things fairly frequently. You use your mind, so you're not just doing menial tasks, you're doing interesting things. So you want a career, you want 40, 50, 60 years of doing something you love and you enjoy. And the purpose of university is to equip you to get that job. All right? Now, obviously, you have a big collection of subjects that you're learning bits and pieces all over the shop, but fundamentally, everything you do here is to equip you to be an engineer and get that job. All right? So what you need to start thinking about, or the way you need to think about your subjects and everything you learn here, is how does this actually help me get a job? Or where am I going to use this in my job? And some of the first year fundamental stuff is largely just so you can do the second year applied stuff, but it all ends up being useful somewhere along the line. Engineering as a degree is very, very vocational, which means a lot more of what you learn here you'll be applying as a graduate engineer than what you might if you were doing a more broad type, arts degree, business, that kind of stuff. You tick a lot of extra boxes there. But we do a lot of what you learn, you will do as an engineer. Or I can speak for mechanical particularly, but the other disciplines are the same. I'm just not a chemical. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I know full well the guys I graduated with are doing the pipeline engineering and mechanical design and project management and all of the things that you learn all the way along. Okay. So, what do you need to get a job? You want to be an engineer, what do you need? So, certification, qualifications? Yeah. So that's one thing. All right, so at the end of your 4 years, you have a qualification. You walk into a design consultancy and you talk to the receptionist and say, hey, I'm an engineer, give me a job. Do you get the job? No. What else do you need? A resume. A resume or a CV. There is a difference, but I'll talk about that in a second. So let's call it a CV because that's what I'll talk about, but that's basically a resume for anyone that doesn't know what that is. So, a CV. What else? Reference. So references might be in your CV, certainly, but you need people that will actually speak to the fact that you're, got a good work ethic and so forth.
Probably an appointment.
An appointment, yeah. So some sort of, maybe make an appointment with the people. Potentially, if you're not making a physical appointment and cold calling them, maybe there's a job advertisement and you're submitting to that. But either way, some sort of connection. All right, so that connection to the employer, what might that be? So that might be you just rock up and say, I'm great, give me a job, or can I have an appointment, or something like that. What else? There might be a job advertisement somewhere. What else? Sorry? Experience. So, all right, well, let's add that to this list. Certainly experience comes under what you need to get a job, different experience or job experience, some sort of work experience. But thinking specifically about connections to the employer, what's a different way to get a connection to an employer?
Something that can be added is experience in group work.
Sorry?
Experience in group work.
Group work, yeah, so probably interpersonal skills. So, do you play well with others?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
For the connection, when they said reps to the uni?
Yeah, exactly. So, any opportunity for networking. All right? So, we have careers days out here, which is companies send representatives out here and you guys can go and talk to them. And you can talk to them and say, all right, you work for Xstrata or BHP or, one of these companies. What do I need to do to get a job at your company? and they will tell you what you need to do to get a job at that company. Now, it's no good me standing up the front here and saying, yeah, make a CV and go and, send emails to people. If you actually have a representative from the company coming out here intentionally to tell you guys how to get a job at that company, and you don't use that opportunity, you're putting yourself behind anyone that does. All right? That's one really good opportunity to work out how to get a job at a company. Networking opportunities that the EUS run. All right, so the EUS have industry nights where, again, industry representatives come out and it's an opportunity for you to make yourself known, introduce yourself, start bugging them for a job. And you can do that right from now. Because if you decide 3.5 years into your degree that, oh shit, I better start organising for a job, the rest of your class started doing it 3 years ago. All right, and there's only a finite number of jobs in each company, and so it's going to be a lot harder to get a job if a lot of those jobs have already been allocated to people because they've built those associations and those relationships. All right, so start thinking from today, not just about how do I get my degree, but what connections and what resources and what things do I need to put in place to get employed? Because the objective of the whole of your degree is to get a job. So if you start thinking about a job a month before you've finished your degree, you're missing the boat. All right? Right from today. All right, so qualifications, CV, something you can actually give to them that demonstrates your qualifications. Some sort of connection, experience. So that might be engineering experience if you've had a graduate role before, or it could be VAC-prac. Everyone has to do 3 months of vacation practice, and that's another opportunity to connect to these employers. All right, oftentimes people do VAC-prac and get a job in that company when they graduate. You need some sort of, so that might be engineering job, or it could just be working at Macca's or Woolworths or something like that. Is it useful for an employer to see that you've worked for 5 years at Woolworths? Yes or no? Yeah. Yes. Why? Teamwork. You're able to at least, well, you haven't got the sack and you've been there for 5 years, so that's saying something about your character already. You're able to work with others and they don't dislike working with you. What else?
That demonstrates time management because you're obviously studying whilst being in that job.
Exactly. It's a really good quality to be able to work and study simultaneously. It shows that you're able to manage a 40-hour-a-week university degree plus what would be 10, 15, 20 hours of work. Shows you've got a good work ethic. What else? So ideally, if you've been there for 4 or 5 years, you'd have a manager that would be able to be a very good reference as to your work ethic. All right? And that would be a meaningful one as opposed to your next door neighbour or your auntie or something like that. Yeah, they're great, I grew up with them, whatever. It's much better to have a professional reference there. And by the time you graduate, generally speaking, you'll have 1 or 2 lecturers that will know you very well and will be able to provide you with a decent reference. But it's always useful to have someone that's actually worked with you. So those jobs are very useful in that respect as well. So it's very good to have any type of work experience, unless it was for a week and you got the sack, at which point you want to probably keep that on the down low. All right, so I'm going to work through these a little bit. We're going to talk about a couple of the features that you need to be thinking about right from now, and then we'll get to portfolios and why you might want a portfolio. But first thing was engineering qualifications. So we talked about the fact that your degree is about getting you qualified as an engineer. The question is, what does that mean? What is a qualified engineer, or at least someone with a university degree in engineering, what distinguishes them from a tradesman or someone that's just come off the street? What is the degree? A piece of paper. That's one thing. If you've got pretty good Photoshop skills, I reckon you'd probably be able to whip out a decent degree. So what the degree actually is, sorry, go on.
Is it a legal document?
Well, so the degree is a legal document. Basically, the degree is me and JCU signing a piece of paper that says we are prepared to let you be an engineer, or we vouch for the fact that you know what you need to know. All right? So a degree is the university signing off on you guys. And the Engineers Australia Stage 1 competency standard is what we're signing off that we or that you know. All right? The sheet of paper that you have in front of you is one page of that document. And if I open up the rest of that document, this is on Learn JCU, guys. All right. Engineers Australia are the accrediting body. That's what says our degree is actually worth anything. And it's what says every university or every engineering degree in the country is worth something. If you don't have an accredited degree, then you can't really work anywhere. So that's very important. And this Stage 1 competency standard is what they're accrediting us against. This is the skills. These are the skills that you as a graduate engineer must have. So this is the page that you have. And each one of these, we as a university have to demonstrate that we provide to you in the accrediting process. And you, every single one of your subjects that you complete will be working towards one or many of these. If you look in our subject outline, there's a whole section on this with a bunch of highlighted elements of competence around what the subject learning outcomes are. Every single one of your subject outlines will have that, all right? So this is what you're learning, this is what your qualification is, and what you need to do and what we're starting to introduce and what Engineers Australia is starting to require is you guys understanding this from day one. All right, so what I'm going to get you to do is, let's just scroll down. Oh, the other thing is, so we've got knowledge, we've got engineering applications, so that's like design, and we've got professional and personal attributes, so that's group work, ethics, communication skills, and that kind of stuff. Okay? And then each one of these elements of competence, you can go to the next pages. You don't have that obviously, but this is on Learn JCU, and you'll see, so 2.1, application of established engineering methods, and then you've got a whole bunch of indicators, which is actually how you might achieve that within the degree. This is the same for every single engineering degree. So mechanical, civil, electrical, what am I missing? Chemical, computer systems, mechatronics, aerospace, any type of engineering that you do, this is the same thing. So this is generic, and then you have specific skills on top of that. So what is it to be a mechanical engineer or civil engineer or whatever. But fundamentally the design ability is the same, it's just the context that you'll learn it in is different. So a civil might learn how to build a bridge, where a mechanical might learn how to, design a pump or a shaft or an engine or something like that, right? So this is generic, but you should be able to read this, and each piece of assessment that you do, if you can align it back to this, you're doing very well, and that will be a very effective thing to communicate in a job interview. All right, let's get back to this thing. All right, so you're going to have a quick activity to familiarise yourself with this, and then I want you to read the full document properly before your workshop either next week or the week after. So that's our thing. You're going to do this. You're going to take the piece of paper that's in front of you, and for these 9 capabilities, skills, tasks, whatever, things that you've done, you're going to work out which one of these apply. And more than one might apply, so let's have a look. SolidWorks technical drawing. If I was to go through this list, I would be able to pick out about 2 or 3 that SolidWorks technical drawing would be demonstrating. All right, as an example, fluent application of engineering techniques, tools and resources, 2.2. SolidWorks is an engineering tool. And so next to that, I would write 1. All right, what else? Effective oral written communication skills in professional and lay domains. So is SolidWorks communication? We've been talking all about drawings being communication between engineers. So once again, I'd put a 1 next to that. All right? So go through these 9 different areas and see if you can pick 1 or 2, maybe 3 of these competencies that apply. And that will give you a good familiarity of what they actually are. Okay, how'd we go? Was that easy? Hard? Completely indifferent? So actually doing that for each piece of assessment or activity that you do at university is starting to teach you to track your own progress, be reflective on the things that you're learning, and contextualize the things that you're learning based on what you need as a graduate engineer, all right? As you move through your degree, you'll start to tick off each of these more and more. And the other thing that you'll do is, for example, a SOLIDWORKS drawing, effectively you're doing what I'm telling you to do. Yeah? So that's a fairly shallow level of learning. At some stage, when you do your centrifugal pump, you'll be applying SOLIDWORKS, but I won't be telling you how. So that's a slightly higher level of learning. And then when you do design in later years, you'll be independently using SOLIDWORKS, teaching yourself more advanced techniques and getting higher and higher. All right? And so you'll actually be evolving how complex your understanding that is, as well as ticking particular boxes here. So these boxes aren't just, all right, I've ticked all of them, I'm good. You need to develop more and more advanced within each of these categories. Okay? And that's what you'll be doing. And if you can track that, as you do assessment, you'll have a really good perspective on what your engineering degree actually means. All right? And if you can discuss that to an employer, that's a really good capability. And I'll talk more about that. Let's go through a couple of these though. So we talked about SOLIDWORKS. Did anyone else have anything else that they thought SOLIDWORKS might come under?
1.2,
Conceptual understanding of the maths, numerical analysis, statistics and computer and information sciences? Yeah, potentially. So conceptual understanding of perhaps SOLIDWORKS and how it works? Yeah. What about technical drawing? Anyone?
3.2.
3.2 is communication, absolutely. So the entire point of those drawings was we were able to communicate, for sure. That's probably also an engineering technique or tool. So technical drawings and interpretation of technical drawings. So I would think that that would be 2.2 as well, much the same as SOLIDWORKS. So by hand and SOLIDWORKS, two different areas, but basically ticking the same boxes. Engineering design. So this is referring to the actual build. So you building physical things. Where would that come under? 2.3? Yeah, absolutely. So 2.3 is the main one. Maybe it'll take a couple other little bits, but 2.3 is the main one for that. What about design report writing? 3.2, communication skills, absolutely. 3.5 is orderly management of self and professional conduct. Yeah, so you need to be able to actually manage yourself and manage your document, that kind of stuff. 3.6 is effective team membership and team leadership. So if you're writing that report as a team, it is absolutely an example of how you functioned as a team, which is good. All right, so group work, 5. Speak up. Yeah, 3.5, 3.6. 3.6 is the main one. There's also 2.4 is technically how you manage the design process. So that's a fairly high level and probably not what you're doing in first year, but as you move towards later years, then that'll probably be hitting that box as well. Excel programming for anyone that's doing EG1002. Sorry? 1.2, yeah, so maths, numerical and analysis, so that's a computer and information science type technique, so definitely 1.2. What else? Sorry? 2.2, fluent application of engineering techniques, tools and resources, so it is definitely a tool for engineering, you will be using it as such. Anything else? 3.4, professional use of management of information, absolutely. So Excel, you're managing information. And the assignment that you have either done or will do with the city council data or whatever, you're managing that data. So you're starting to understand how what you're actually doing at university is ticking boxes of what you need as capability as a graduate engineer. There's a couple other there. MATLAB is going to be similar. MA1000 I put because it all ticks one box. Which box? 1.1. Which one? No, 1.2 because that's mathematics. So 1.1 is effectively fundamental physics. So any of the science, the fundamental stuff in the background, so like chemistry, physics, any of that stuff. And then 1.2 is any of the maths behind any of the stuff that you're dealing with. So maths will be 1.2. And then physics, PH 1005, is technically about half 1.1 and half 1.2 because some of what you're learning is maths, some of what you're learning is the actual physics behind everything. All right? Is everyone starting to maybe not be comfortable with that, but starting to understand why we might do that and how you actually go through those motions? All right? So what I suggest to you, and what we're going to talk about in portfolios in a second, is that you would go through this exercise for each piece of assessment that you do, or major assessment, so maybe a major SOLIDWORKS drawing or a major design report. You tick these boxes and then you throw it in your portfolio so that you can actually show an employer. But I'll talk about why we do that in a second. All right. Anyone know how you pronounce that? Curriculum vitae? Vitae? Something like that? CV is a lot easier. All right. The difference between a CV and a resume is basically just for professional stuff. I worked at Macca's, I worked at Woolworths, I want to work at KFC or whatever. A CV is the professional version of that. You guys as engineers will have a professional qualification. Things like education and professional work experience is important. So a CV is kind of the professional type of resume. All right, so what you will be producing as engineers or as engineering graduates is a CV. Who's got a CV? Yeah? Who's comfortable with the way it lays out and the information that you would put into a CV? Anyone? All right, great. This is a very useful little section of the lecture then. You guys need to put a CV together. And the act of doing that now perhaps tells you what you need to put in it to be able to get a job. So if you have empty sections, perhaps around the section headings that I've put there, then that's telling you that these are the things that I need to do above and beyond my university degree that I'm studying to be able to get a job. And that might be a vacation position sometime next year or the year after, and it might be preparing for your final career, graduate positions as well. But if you understand what needs to go in a professional CV, then you start to understand what you need to do. So I've gone through a lot of different resources online, and you guys can do exactly the same thing about professional engineering CVs. And these are roughly the headings that I like, all right? I'll show you some examples in a second, but the first thing at the very top is your personal details. So your name, your qualification, your contact details, phone number, email, etc. And some of the CVs that I actually like have a picture of the person as well, if it's a good picture, like a professionally taken picture. Because if you've got a big pile of CVs, maybe that sets it apart. Maybe they can see your face and they can actually relate to who you are rather than just a bunch of information on a page. Next section will be your education. So in your context, that will be your high school and your university. Once you've got more than one degree, then high school doesn't really matter that much. But if you've got an engineering degree and probably where you went to high school or that kind of stuff, if you've got trades, then maybe you put trades under education, or maybe you put trades under an additional heading training. If you've done other training courses that aren't a trade and aren't university but that are useful, relevant, management training through one of the casual employers or something like that, that's really useful to have, so you put it in there. Professional experience, so this is any engineering jobs you've had. All right, that can be VacPrac, that can be actual graduate positions, it could be internships that you do for free or something like that, any type of professional stuff. So by the time you graduate, that professional experience should at least have 3 months of VacPrac, either in one block or in multiple different blocks if you do it a month at a time in different places. Voluntary work always looks good because it shows you give a shit about something. Further employment experience, so that's where you put your Woolworths, McDonald's, etc. And for all the reasons that we talked about, that stuff's really useful to have because it shows that you're able to work and you have a work ethic and you're able to, manage work and uni and that kind of stuff. All right, so that is useful to have there, but it's not the first thing you put because we're talking about your profession, you as an engineer, and also whatever extra skills you might have, and this sort of comes under that category. So it's not the most important thing, but it's important to be there. What else have we got? Technical skills. So that's where you list off, I am good at SOLIDWORKS, Word, Excel, MATLAB, whatever other skills you've got, ANSYS, finite elements by the time you get to sort of third year and that kind of stuff. So what capabilities have you got? You can do it in dot point, you can do it in a big list, you can elaborate on some things if there's important things that you want to highlight, but that's where you talk about some of the skills that you've got. Interests. Interests, be concise, have a line or two on what interests you. It shows that you've got a well-rounded character, but fundamentally they don't care that you play guitar. They care that you've got experience, you know. And then references, at least two, and all of the contact details of the people that you would like them to call and ask, are you worth employing? All right? And so when you have a reference in a document like this, it's courteous and almost compulsory to ask the person that you are listing here. All right, so don't just start listing random names and have someone called up randomly and have to talk about you. Firstly, because they're not prepared to do it. Secondly, they might not want to do it. So you need to ask whoever you're going to put in this, and make sure that you have at least one professional one. So your mum and your auntie aren't good enough. All right, you need at least someone who can speak to either your engineering capability or your work ethic. Ideally both. Okay, so choose them wisely. Don't just choose whoever's convenient to do it. By the time you get to second, third and fourth year, then you can have one of us as one of those if we know you and if you're in our degree and that kind of stuff. But you'd ideally have an employer or something like that as well. Anything that's in this that's dated, it needs to be in reverse chronological order. So what that means is the most recent first. So if you were listing your education, you would say Bachelor Engineering degree, 2016 to present, or January 2016 to present. Then you would say high school, whatever. So you go in reverse chronological order. Same thing with the jobs, because everyone wants to know what's the most recent thing you've done. All right. Now, on LearnJCU, I've put up 4 examples of different CVs, and what we can also do is go online, and if you were to Google image CV, you would have 100 more examples. Let's see. Images. CV. There is just infinite numbers of examples of CVs, way to lay it out, different fonts. You see this guy's got a happy snap there, and you look at that and you put that next to piles of paper with just the text. Which one do you pick up first? This guy. Yeah? So now JCU has different services that help you out with CVs and things, and if they say don't put a picture on it because it's not professional or whatever, listen to them. I think it's good. I like it, so feel free to do it until someone else tells you not to. Cool? Take information from as many sources as you can. If you go to one of those careers fairs, ask them what a CV that they will pick up and read first looks like. What sort of CV do you like? Do you like a photo of the person on the CV or not? Go to the networking things and ask them. These are employment skills. So if you're aiming at working for BHP or whoever, and you go to them and say, what do you like in a CV? If they tell you something different to me, listen to them. They're the ones employing you. All right? So go and ask people. Learn. You don't need to just do what you're told. So there's lots of examples here of different ways to lay out a resume. Just click through them and find one that jumps out of the page at you, and then kind of match that formatting. Yeah? So there's different ways of doing it. Lots of people doing lots of different things, but sometimes the information seems really dense and convoluted, and sometimes the information is really clear. All right. So that's one resource. Just look up CV or resume on Google Images, and that's a good start. I've got 4 CVs or 4 documents that I've put up on LearnJCU for you to reference. And let's just have a look at a couple of them. This one's good because it actually tells you some of the sections and what needs to be in those sections. So once again, this is largely the order or the format or the sections that I told you about. So we've got the person, their details, their education in reverse chronological order, training, industrial placements, so that's professional experience, voluntary work, further employment experience, IT skills, interests and references. So this is largely what I followed in those sections, but I added a couple of sections that I think are useful. What else have I got? I've got... Oh, who's seen Elon Musk's resume? That went around... It was like viral for last week or week before or something like that. 1-page resume. Your resume shouldn't be much more than 2 to 3 pages. If it's 3 pages, it's probably okay. 2 pages is good. 1 page for a professional one where you're not the CEO of about 8 companies maybe is a bit light for you guys, so maybe 2 is okay. But Elon Musk has managed to fit all of this information on 1 page and it looks really nice. Yeah? So you don't just need the Word file, Times New Roman, dot point resume. You can put a bit of graphic design in it if you want to stand out from the crowd. And I guess that's the major point to take from this. But you see, even on his pretend resume, because he wanted to get a bit of likes and shares and whatnot, you got him, his contact details, a picture of him, his work experience, his education. He's got some skills and competencies, achievements and certificates. If you've got awards and things, you can have a section for awards or scholarships or whatever. That's always good too. Language, interests, etc. All right, so even for him, he's following largely the format that we're talking about. Okay. I've put, what's this one? This one's a sample that I found just online, and it's a Monash University example. So don't worry about this colourful heading banner rubbish. Get rid of that. That's not important. But again, the person, address, qualifications, relevant experience. So just look at different ways to format the information that jump out of the page. All right? Skill summary, references, etc. Interests, second last thing. Here's a good skill summary: computer system analysis, communication skills, computer skills, and a little bit of evidence or a description of how you actually are justifying that. So that's useful. And I've also put my CV, which is out of date now, but this is the way that I've formatted mine, just for an example. Again, me, contact information. I've got research interests, so you can have a bit of a blurb at the top that sort of describes your outlook on life or what's important to you. But don't say, I am hugely greeny, environmental, save the planet, and then go and apply to an oil company or something like that, So make sure that your blurb is at least context specific to the job you're applying for. But by all means, have a little mission statement on what you believe in, because that's a very useful thing for an employer to have. All right? Unless the employer believes the exact opposite to what you believe in, and then you're probably not going to get the job. But, that's up to you. Same thing with a cover letter. We didn't talk about cover letters before, but you'll probably need a cover letter. And you can do exactly the same thing. Go online and look for examples of cover letters, and it'll tell you how to write one of them. All right, and, once again, references at the end. So this is just a different way to format things. All right, so you're starting to see that a CV isn't just a bunch of dot points you put together 4 minutes before you apply for a job application or before you apply for a position. A CV is actually something you put time into and that represents what you have learnt. All right? Now, if I put on my CV... Oh, hang on, let's get this started again. All right. So, you now need to stand out from the crowd. All right? You'll be applying with tens, hundreds of other people to a particular job. You're a graduate engineer and you're very well qualified, but what makes your application stand out? The first thing is maybe you have a very well written CV with a pretty picture of you and it's formatted really nicely and it's got good graphic design. So firstly, that pops off the page. That's one thing. Second thing is, if you're just giving them a resume that says, I know SolidWorks, everyone's giving them a resume that says, I know SolidWorks. How do I know that you're good at SolidWorks and someone else is not as good as you? All right? Evidence. And if you're able to compile evidence and prove that you've got excellent communication skills, everyone says they have excellent communication skills. Every single CV that you ever read will say, I have excellent communication skills. And it'll probably be misspelt, and that demonstrates that they don't. But everyone says they have this stuff. But employer reads through it and just brushes over it and says, communication, 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 excellent communication, communication. It doesn't mean anything. But if you can prove that you have excellent communication skills, that sets you apart. That gets you to the top of this pile. And you can do that Either by good networking and making yourself known to these people, because then they have a face, they understand when they see your resume, they know what you look like, they've talked to you before, they know that you can actually carry a conversation. That's a useful thing. Also, a portfolio. All right, so who's heard of an ePortfolio before? Some of you? Who thinks portfolio is something that an artist does to prove that they're an artist? Some of you? A portfolio is just a compilation of all the evidence that proves that your CV is not bullshit, basically. All right? And an ePortfolio is a website version of that. And in today's day and age, you're not going to send them a big pile of papers this big that are all your SOLIDWORKS drawings you ever did, because no one's ever going to look at it and it's going to go straight to the bottom of the pile. But if you send a really well-formatted CV and have a web link to your ePortfolio, then the person looks at that and goes, oh, I can actually see whether they know what they're doing, and click on that link or put it into a website and go and see some of the evidence that you're providing. And the sorts of evidence that you provide might be your SOLIDWORKS drawings. It might be good design reports that you've written. You could, if you're giving a seminar in a later year subject, you could video record your design seminar and put a YouTube video up. And then you say, I have excellent communication skills. Refer to video or something like that, and they can actually watch you present and talk. And that's invaluable. That means that they don't have to learn that when you walk into the interview and say and ah and and ah the whole time. They realise that right from the very beginning you can talk. And so an ePortfolio is a place where you very carefully put the best things that you've done that demonstrate the points that you're putting on a CV. I know Excel. Here's a code I wrote. I know MATLAB. Here's a code I wrote. And you don't just put the raw code. You put a bit of a summary of what it is and maybe a picture of how it functions, and then they can click on the code if they want. Okay? But a portfolio is evidence. Very useful. And you guys, funnily enough, all have access to a website or an ePortfolio interface called PebblePad. All right? It's free. Or the university pays for it technically. And it's just a website content management system. You put a bunch of information up there and hit Make Live, and it gives you a URL, and you can send that URL to any employer, and you now have a website for your CV. All right? And the entire workshop next week and the week after will be me with screencasts making you make a website. All right? It's pretty easy, it's pretty straightforward, but you're going to put your SOLIDWORKS drawings and various other things into it, okay? And then it's up to you for the rest of the 3.5 years to keep maintaining it, but I strongly advise you it's very useful. This is just the example that I'm working on for myself at the moment, not for myself, but as an example to you guys. It's a work in progress because I keep changing things around as I'm putting these screencasts together for next week. But one example is, if I go engineering application, example SOLIDWORKS drawings, I've got 4 examples here. If I was to click on that last one, I've got, some JPEGs of what those SOLIDWORKS are, and then I can click on that and it'll open the file if I want, and they can download the PDF file. All right? So if they're interested, they can actually go ahead and click and work out whether you're any good at what you say you're good at. And you can do all of your design reports and all sorts of things in an ePortfolio. It's very useful. All right. Sorts of things you might put: personal information, CV, evidence. So evidence across any of those dot points there, which might be things like I've said, teamwork. It's very difficult to evidence teamwork, but if you have a blog there and discuss how you've interacted with teams or different team projects you've worked on, that shows that you're reflective, and that in itself demonstrates good teamwork, that you actually care about teamwork. So you can put a blog in this thing and talk about your teamwork experiences, that kind of stuff. All right, so that's me. Before next week, you need to do these 2 things. All right, one is comprehensively read the full document of the EA competency standard online, because you will be ticking these boxes for each piece that you put up in your ePortfolio. And if you're unfamiliar, it will take you longer. 2 is, for that workshop, you must have your evidence ready to put in the ePortfolio. If you rock up to the workshop and you don't have all of the file PDFs for your SOLIDWORKS drawings and all of that kind of stuff, you're not going to be able to actually do the workshop then. You're going to have to go home, get all of that stuff and do it in your own time, and then the tutors won't be there to help you. All right, so any evidence you have. Report 1, SOLIDWORKS drawings. Potentially reports from EG1002. If you've done the Excel stuff, you might have the codes or whatever you'd like to put up. All of that stuff, start to think about what you'd like to put in your ePortfolio and put it on a stick so that you've got it available for that workshop next week. All right? And as I said, the actual tracking your own progress is very useful because EA has a stage 2 competency standard which you need to manage your own progress towards once you're a graduate. And that's the thing that gets you certified. You can't sign on the dotted line as a graduate engineer. You sign on the dotted line as a certified engineer, which happens around 4 to 7 years, I suppose, after you graduate. By then you will have compiled enough evidence for Engineers Australia to sign off on you. And you need to compile that evidence by yourself using things like portfolios. So if you start now, employers look at you as someone that's going to fast track towards certification. You make about 10 to 20 grand a year more once you're certified, and they have someone who can sign documents, which is a fantastic thing for an employer, and they want as many of them as they can. All right? So your ability to manage this portfolio is in itself a skill that employers want. Okay? Cool. Cheers, guys.